So I think with the regulators clamping down, data becomes almost a liability. And so businesses are now shifting to store less of it rather than more of it.
Tell me how much attention you think is there within sort of smaller app development community to cybersecurity in general, and specifically for their apps.
Well, it's very hard as a small app developer to secure everything. I should know. I run a small, app development company. Um, Usually, you want to take in as the less data that you take in, the less liability you have. And now with the laws from the European Union and California and other places like GDPR, basically almost make data a liability for any registered business. It's not anonymous, and that's the only kind of business that can put apps in the App Store. There are certainly businesses that can make a website on the open web, and you have to watch out sometimes of what you share with just random websites. But Apple and others tend to vet the apps, which is at least basic minimal, standards. And one of the standards is the fact that you have an address, that you're registered in a country, you have a Dun and Bradstreet number or something. So those kinds of businesses, the regulators can find, and they can find them for storing data that they shouldn't, that they don't have a real need to store. So I think with the regulators clamping down, data becomes almost a liability. And so businesses are now shifting to store less of it rather than more of it. And that's what I like to see. End-to-end encryption is almost the end game of that. End-to-end encryption is when you store the data all on your client's devices under your control. And whenever it's sent out, it's encrypted first. So no other computers have the keys. And so essentially connecting and giving permissions to a friend or adding a friend actually becomes sharing a key, an encryption key to this or that data. So that's essentially where everything's going. But for the time being, we do trust Facebook, LinkedIn, we trust GitHub, for example, to store the code, to index the code, and to help us search and find things and collaborate. But really, GitHub doesn't need to exist because you could have Git, which is a program that runs on your computer, and you can encrypt traffic end to end. So at the end of the day, you can have some encrypted, end-to-end encrypted solutions. But until that happens, the governments are essentially making it costly to store data, just like they have been with PCI compliance for credit card data, for example, and other things. They require you to have procedures in place, and that creates a sort of liability when you start storing what is called personally identifiable information, or PII, information that can be used to identify an individual. And there's degrees of that. So the more of that you store, the more procedures you have to have in place.